Today we're going to be looking at another programming construct which is known as selection. This is the technique of using if, elif and else in Python. So we've already looked at a programming construct called a sequence, which is where one instruction follows on from the next one in your programming. And the most common technique that we're going to use to do that in Python is known as if, elif and else, or sometimes just if and else. So we are going to be making use of something known as a Boolean expression, which is how it's going to check if a condition is true or false, and depending on what the condition outcome is, it will then choose one path or another one. So there's going to be a lot of keywords that I'm going to be using throughout this video, so I'm just going to run through them really quickly so you know what I'm on about. So the first one is known as a condition. Now this will be our first example we'll see in Python, but it's where we're going to check the Boolean expression, and that is our condition. For example, we might check if the age is over or greater than 18. That is the condition. If that is then true, it would do that thing. Now, sometimes, like I said, you might do one path or another one. That's also referred to as a branch sometimes. So depending on the outcome of the decision, it's either going to do one branch or another one. The final keyword that we're going to be using a lot today is known as indentation. And this is like a little gap which follows our line where it checks our conditions. It'll be really obvious when we look at the Python in a moment. Python syntax, which is the rules of Python programming, if you've not got your indentation, it will come up with an error. So we need to make sure that we've got our indentation in the right place so that it works correctly. So take a quick screenshot. These are all the different types of Boolean expressions that we could use when doing selection. I've also included logical expressions in here as well, which are like and, or not. So it always makes a lot more sense when we see an actual Python version of it. So let's have a little chat about that. So in this program, we've got on line 1, we're going to ask the user to enter their age. And you can see I've used casting on here, which is int, to make sure that Python knows it's an integer, a whole number that's going to be entered by the user. Here is our keyword that we're going to be using for selection. We've got if, which are popped on line 3. Now, when you read these out loud, they make a lot more sense. So if the age is greater than or equal to 13, and, which is our logical expression, the age is less than or equal to 18, it will say teenager. So if it meets those conditions, that the number that they've put in is between 13 and 18, it will say teenager. So to add in extra options of conditions that we want to check, this one's saying if the age is over 18, and we've used elif for that. It kind of means else if, but you would write elif to make it work in Python. So if the age is over 18, then it's going to say adults. Finally, anything else that they put in, it must be below 13 because we've covered all other options. So if it's anything else, it will just say child. So let's run this and see what happens, and we'll try some different test data so we can see all the different options and whether they come out or not. So this is the first time running it. It says at the bottom here, enter age. So I'm going to put in 14, and it says teenager, as I would expect it to. Let's run it again. So this time I'm going to put in some boundary data. Let's put 13 because that's right on the edge. Still says teenager, which is correct. So I'm pleased with that. Okay, this time we want an age which is going to display our middle option, which is going to be adult. So let's go for 20. And it's correctly displaying adult, which is good. And then finally, let's go for something below our teenager. So let's go for the age 8, which should display child. Perfect. So as you can see here, we've tried all different branches. We've got it to display the word teenager, we've got it to display the word adult, and we've got it to display the word child, all separate depending on what I did and what I entered. And these are checked by these conditions that I mentioned earlier, these Boolean expressions, which is like the greater than or equal to sign or the less than or equal to sign. And for this example, I also showed you a logical expression, which is this word and, to make sure that it was checking both of those conditions. One thing I want to point out, which is something that lots of people miss out, is this second variable age that I've got here on this first line. So if I got rid of that, this is the most common thing that people write, which is actually a mistake. So it kind of reads like you would expect it to. If the age is greater than or equal to 13 and less than or equal to 18, display teenager. But that won't work. you do need that variable in there again, otherwise it doesn't know what to check for the second condition. So just make sure that you've got this one included as well. We're going to look at another program which uses selection now, and in this one there's a few more techniques that are just very useful to you that you might be able to use when you try out selection yourself, so I thought I'd show you this one. So in this one, we've got to start off with the user's going to be asked to enter their name. And notice I've not used any casting this time. We've just used input so that they can type in a string, which is going to be checked. Let's say this is going to be checking what they type in. If they accidentally don't type something, that's what this does. If the name is equal to, and then 2 speech marks. Now what that means is it's checking if it's empty, and if it is empty, it's going to display the message to them, you didn't type anything, which is a really good validation technique just to see if they've actually typed something that's expected. The next branch that we've got on here is going to check if the length of the name is less than 2 characters. So len is checking the variable name and how many characters it's got in it, and if it's less than 2, we're going to assume that that is not long enough. Less than 2, which means it would just be 1 letter or below. So that wouldn't be enough. So enter at least 2 characters for a name is what it's going to display to them if they type that. It might be a typo. Maybe they've accidentally typed in 1 letter and pressed enter and so on. But we're going to assume that it's not allowed in this program. So it's going to come up with an error message. We're going to assume that everything else that has been typed is allowed, and it's just going to display the message saying nice to meet you if it's anything else, which means that it's going to be over 2 characters and it's not an empty string that they've put in. So let's give this a go and see if it works. So enter name, we're going to start with Mr. Moore. Nice to meet you. So it's accepted that, it's absolutely happy with that. Let's run it again. This time I'm just going to press enter straight away and see what happens. You didn't type anything, so it can see that it was an empty value. It didn't like it, so you didn't type anything. And then finally, we're just going to put X as our name, which has only got 1 character. And it says enter at least 2 characters for a name. So all 3 branches are working correctly with the criteria that we've put in. And that's it for this one. I'll see you next time.